So at the beginning we said that the two primary resources we are interested in are time and space. So time is the running time and space is how much memory our algorithm takes. So time depends on the CPU. Right? There's not much we can do to our CPUs. We can just run them at the speed that they're designed for. So there's really little that we can do to improve the running time. On the other hand, space can be augmented. Right? So we can add RAM, for example. So if we add RAM, and this is often a suggestion that people offer, if your server is running slow, add some RAM to it. That speeds up things for indirect reasons, not because your algorithm is more efficient, because other associated overheads improve. But the point is that space is a flexible resource. So space is flexible to the extent that even in existing hardware, it's possible to add memory or to replace a memory chip by a bigger chip, whereas this is sort of inflexible. So this is possibly one motivation to focus on space, or sorry, focus on time and not space so much. So it's not that space is unimportant, okay? So space is important, but most analysis starts with time, and most initial analysis and most initial books about the efficiency of algorithms will focus only on time analysis. So we will also stick to primarily time analysis. Okay, so when we do our efficiency analysis or various techniques, we will mostly look at running time. So space will be a secondary consideration. In very rare cases, we might talk about space, but mostly we will assume that space is not a constraint and running time is what matters to us. So the other thing that we must remember is that running time is not independent. So time is a function of input size, right? So the algorithm will not take the same amount of time on different inputs. So for instance, larger arrays will take longer time to sort. This is obvious, right? So we need some way of tying our analysis to the input size. So typically we will represent our efficiency as a function of the input size. So efficiency is a function of the input size. So we'll say something like T of n for time, or generally we can say f of n. So what we mean here is that n is the input size, right? So given an input of size n, then it takes f of n time or T of n time in order to compute an answer. Now, of course, we still need to specify what is T of n. Okay, because now we have different inputs of size n. So there's not only one input of size n. So for instance, if it is sorting, we might have some inputs which are completely sorted already, some inputs which are kind of jumbled up. We might have a random permutation. And it's not clear that a sorting algorithm will take the same amount of time for all of these. So usually, as we will see, we focus on what is called the worst case. That is, that n for which the time is longest. Not that n, that input of size n, for which the running time is longest. Okay? So when we say T of n, unless we say otherwise, we really mean that we are taking a kind of worst case estimate over all inputs of size n, what is the time our algorithm takes. And this kind of gives us an overall upper bound on how long our algorithm will take to execute. Because if it takes T of n time, then we can be sure that for any input of size n, it will terminate within that time. So this is the maximum time we need to budget for. Having said this, now we have still the question of specifying the input size, right? So what is the input size, right? So if you look at arrays, for instance, if you're looking at sorting or something, then the size of the array is a natural bound. Okay? The size of the array is a number of elements, right? It's not the values of the elements. It doesn't take us any longer to sort an array with small values than it does to sort an array with large values, assuming of course the values are not so large that it takes unusual storage. So if we are sorting arrays which have numbers like 13, 14 and 17, and we are sorting another array which has numbers like 5 million and 7 million, the fact that one has 5 million and 7 million doesn't really make a difference. It's only the number of elements. Okay? So for arrays and for other problems involving arrays, size of an array is typically the input size. Then we could have what are called combinatorial problems. Okay? So combinatorial problems could consist of finding rearrangements, or for finding, for instance, if you are given, like we saw earlier, we are trying to find the nearest pair of points. We had this kind of a problem, right? So we had these points and we were trying to find, so this is a problem involving some kind of geometry or of objects. So here we would typically have the number of objects, right? So here the natural input size is not exactly where the points are or whether the point is red, blue or green or something, but exactly how many points there are. That's typically what we will ask. Now, many problems are modeled using graphs. So a graph, as you know, is a picture where we have some vertices and we have some edges, right? And now we could have for the same number of vertices, like we have 4 vertices, we could have something like this, or we could have for four vertices, we could have a graph in which all possible things are there. And so here, typically we have edges and vertices, okay? And the number of vertices and the number of edges will be 2 independent parameters for a graph problem. Another important class of problems are number theoretic. So this is in fact the first type of algorithm that we learn even in school. So we ask how to take given n, how to compute square root of n, okay? Or is n prime? Okay? So this is a number theoretic algorithm. So we are given a number and we want to determine some property of it, or we want to determine another quantity from it. We want to given n, we want to find its square root, or we want to check whether it's a prime. So for this kind of thing, the number n is the input, but what is the input size? So is the size n? Okay. So now let's look at an example which will clarify things. So supposing I want to add two-digit numbers. So supposing I want to say 51 plus 69. Okay. So the way I would do it is column by column. So I would say 9 and 1 is 10 and I carry 1. And then I say 6 plus 5 plus 1 and I get 12, and this is my answer. Now supposing I multiply these numbers by 10, that is I get a number which has got 10 times on each. So supposing I take a number like 513 and 692. Okay, so now the n has gone up by a factor of 10. But how much work do I do? Well, instead of adding 2 columns, I now add 3 columns. I say 3 plus 2 is 5, 9 and 1 is 10, carry 1, and so on. Right? So multiply n by 10. This adds 1 digit. Okay, and the work is proportional to columns, which is the number of digits. Right? So it makes sense, in other words, to ask that for number theoretic algorithms, okay, so number theoretic, the input is the number of digits. Input size is the number of digits. Okay. So now if I take a number like say 10,462, okay, so this is 1.0462 times 10 to the 4, right? So this will be, so if I take the log to the base 10 of this number, okay, it's going to be 4 point something, right? So this 4 comes from here, right? So in some sense, log gives the number of digits. Okay, so therefore log n is a better estimate rather than n itself, because log n gives you an accurate picture that you are actually operating digit by digit. Now typically, of course, we work in binary, right? So we have bits, not bits. So we have 1011, so this is some 2 to the something, right? So therefore we'll typically talk of log to the base 2 of n and not log n, because most of the algorithms we deal with, we assume we are working with a binary representation, because that's what internally a computer will use. So log 2n will give the number of bits. Okay, so if you want to be really precise, then what you have to do is remember that we had this dot dot dot. So we had a fraction there, right? So we will have the log 2 of n will be some 6 point something something something. So there will be the something something something. So now if you take what is called the floor of this, okay, then you will get the integer part. Okay, and then the something else will correspond to some possibly the rest of the fraction, the digit. So this will be the kind of the whole part, and then there will be some additional things. So typically you take log 2 of n floor, and then you account for that extra bit by 1 more. So this is how many bits there are. So of course this is a precise calculation, but for our purposes it's enough to say that log 2 of n is equal to number of bits, because we are not going to be worried, as we will see later, about these constant factors like +1 and all that. So these are irrelevant. Okay. So this is how we fix the input size for a number theoretic algorithm. Now the last thing that we need to look at before we actually get into techniques for doing the measurement is how we are going to measure it. So what are the units? Okay. So remember we're talking about time. right? We're talking about how much time an algorithm takes. Okay, so should we report the running time in seconds, or in milliseconds, or in microseconds, or something smaller? Okay. Now the problem with all of these is it's too concrete. Right? So it's kind of difficult to say that I run my algorithm for 3 seconds on my desktop and somebody else runs their algorithm for half a second on a supercomputer, and which is faster, right? So this is tied too much to the hardware. So we want a more abstract notion. We want something which will be translatable even if the hardware changes. So if we can look at two algorithms, if they're running on different hardwares, we can still get an analysis which doesn't focus on the hardware so much, but talks about something intrinsic, right? So usually the idea is to focus on what we call basic operations, right? So we assume that there are certain basic operations which take unit time. Okay, so unit time is again a kind of unspecified notion, but these are basic operations. So we look at these basic operations, and a typical basic operation for sorting, for example, would be to compare two numbers. Another algorithm, another basic operation in almost any algorithm is to assign a value. Okay? So we'll have something like x is assigned some expression. So this assignment takes 1 unit time, and this is something like what happens when you say if x is less than y, greater than y, so and so. So this is a comparison. So every comparison is a basic operation. Every assignment is a basic operation. Now this E could itself hide operations inside it, so we'll worry about it if we need it. So this could have complex function computations and so on. But the main thing is to identify what we call basic operations, which are relevant to the context, and work with them. Okay, so the basic operations are kind of subjective. Okay, so what if we have something like swap x and y, that is exchange the values in x and y. Now typically we'll have to do this by saying that we will take the value of x and write it into some temporary variable, then we will take the value of y and write it into x, and then we'll take the value that we had put in this temporary variable and restore it into y, right? So now this is 3 assignments, right? So 3 assignments equal to 1 swap. So now if we count the number of swaps, effectively if you multiply by 3, we get the number of assignments. What we will see later is that constants don't matter. So 3 times something is okay as long as the 3 doesn't depend on the n. So constants don't matter. So we could do this. Right? So we could choose to simplify our calculations by just treating swap as a basic operation. So the important thing is that the number of basic operations that we consider is dependent on the problem, and we choose an appropriate one which we want given the problem that we are trying to address. So let's summarize what we have seen so far today. So first of all, we saw that analysis, okay, typically focuses on time efficiency. Okay, and space is the other option. But we usually don't focus so much on space for reasons that we discussed. Okay. The other thing that we said is that typically the running time is a function of input size. So we cannot talk about an absolute efficiency of an algorithm. We can only talk about how efficient it is on a given input of that size. And the same algorithm for different sizes will obviously take different times, but we want to see how this behavior varies as a function of the input size. And the final thing that we saw is that we want an abstract unit, okay, some kind of basic operation to report our answers. So we are not going to talk in terms of concrete units of time, but rather in terms of how many steps it takes, in terms of some notion of step which we fix so that we can compare all algorithms. So it's not really important that we know exactly what the step is for all algorithms. But if you're talking about 2 sorting algorithms, certainly we would expect the same notion to be basic in both. Otherwise, we can't be comparing them. If one of them we're counting different things and the other one we're counting different things, it doesn't make much sense. Okay? So with these 3 things at the back of our mind, we will now go on to see how we can formulate a notation and some kind of framework in order to actually write down what we are interested in.